Hello everyone, my name is Marcus and today I'm going to show you a improved version of my old tutorial on customizing the details panel. So what this essentially shows is the same as it did last time. The only difference being we're going to do it in a more proper way, how you're supposed to do it. So let's just start right ahead. So what I've prepared is a little project. This is a voxel world project where you can essentially, you have to hit play, you run around in this world and you can like remove things from there and jump around and everything. So yeah, this part works fine, but there's this list of different materials your chunks or your blocks can have. And so we have empty, which is just nothing. Then there's dirt, grass, stone, and so on. So what you saw is a lot of grass. They are bound to their IDs, and if you essentially switch these two apart, then you'll see that suddenly everything is dirt and not grass anymore, right? And when you go deeper, there's the stone again. So what I want to do is I want to create a button that essentially sorts them by their IDs, just like they were last time around. So there's dirt and then there's grass. So when I hit the button, just the material ID list is accurate and there's nothing wrong with it, right? So that's just like, it's a silly use case in general, but it is one of the use cases. Well, it is one of the things you can do to achieve where one of these buttons could be a good thing. And you could totally do this by using Blueprint utilities, yes, but I just want to do it again in the proper way. So we're going to use C++ again, just in the old video. However, what we're going to start off with modifying our .u project. So what you want to do is you want to open your .u project file within the JSON editor. Now, if you have a code project already, there should be this modules sector. If you don't, you should add just one class, and then this modules object, essentially array, should be in there. So this is JSON. I don't know if you never used JSON before. It's it stands for JavaScript Object Notation. And well, it's pretty simple. So you've got essentially one big object, which is all of this, encapsulated in these things, like in these two. And then you just have it's like a bit like XML, it's key value usually. So essentially this modules is an array, as you can see by these, I don't know how they're called, but whatever. We're going to add a new item, so essentially just doing it like this. And then we're going to mirror this. Alright, so name, and by name, now you could use any name for this. If you have a special name for the module, okay, albeit. Usually if you do an editor module, you should just call it like the project and then editor. Type is a editor module. There are different types. I can't tell them from the top of my head right now. I'm sorry, but we can maybe look them up. Maybe I show them. If not, then I haven't found them. The loading phase is post engine init. Loading phases I actually did look up. So first of all, here's the stuff about modules and targets. We're going to this in a second. Load phase is, I believe, an enum. Should be e-loading phase, yes. Where's e-loading phase? Loading phase, yes. sometimes documentation isn't the best thing. Yeah, there's so we have these options. It's like earliest possible, as soon as possible, post config init, post splash screen, pre-early loading. Again, I'll just put this link in the description. Now we're using post engine init after the engine has been initialized. So yeah, and then additional dependencies. We're going to just put a empty array there because whatever, we're going to put this in our build CS anyway. So far so good. What this does is it tells the engine that there's a module that you're trying to discover. Now if I were to close this one and try to open up the EU project, usually, well, apparently not. What's going on here? Well, it should complain. I don't know what's going on here. Well, probably. Well, she doesn't care for now, but we're going to change this in a minute. So, I don't know, for whatever reason. Oh, there's... okay, well, maybe I should just clean up and then rebuild. I don't know. Do I have the wrong file open? Could very well be, but it shouldn't. I did this just before, so I have everything fresh in my mind. So whatever. Which brings us essentially to the whole modules thing, which you just saw within the browser, like right here. So there's a pretty good documentation about these things. There's stuff where the documentation lacks a lot, but I think the modules and targets is not part of the type of the documentation. So Unreal Build Tool is essentially like the whole tool. What's going on here? Does this still load? No. There's different, exactly, so it will tell you this, but then there's probably, exactly, it can't do it because there's nothing there. Yeah, so every module needs to have its own target.cs file. That's because the engine needs to know what is this for. There's 5 different target types, as it says here. There's a game, client, server, editor, and program. And it just says a game, a standalone game, which requires cooked data to run. Then client is same as game, but does not include any server code, so like no listen server or whatever. Then server is same as game, but does not include any client code, so it's for dedicated servers and network games. Like, then obviously the editor, a target which extends the Unreal editor. That's what we're looking after right now. And yeah, I hope I'm not talking too fast. Now what we need to do is Unreal already has generated a voxelworld editor.target.cs for us. That's because when we build in the editor, it does not generate the usual game target, but the editor target. So when you hit play in editor, you're playing from off the editor target, I believe. I'm not 100% sure, don't quote me on that. So you need to add our editor to the extra module names. And the reason being is we have the voxelworld target. However, we're also within the editor target, there's the usual voxelworld target is being initialized or added, and also the editor now, which is what we're going to add in a second. Now for that, I generally like to use Notepad++. You go into your source folder of your project, right? And you're going to create a folder named after your module. So in our case now, it's voxelworld editor. And within this file, we're going to have to create a, again, module name.build.cs. Now we're also going to preemptively create a public folder. And we're also creating a private folder. Now in the public folder, we're going to do this later. We're just creating them. Then we're adding this to Visual Studio, or essentially we're just now one thing you should, or you shouldn't probably, but you can just copy over all of from a game.build.cs file, and alternatively you can just copy from here. Not really that it matters. However, it's important that you name it after your editor, after your module. Not after your editor, but after the module name. And essentially this constructor sets all the properties. So this way we can set our own. And let's just make it more list, easier to read for everyone, I believe. I hope. Let's just make this a bit bigger. Great. So for this module, I don't need procedural mesh component. Should make sure you have core and core U project and engine in there. That's always good. Now in our case, we use Slate, and Slate core can't hurt to have it in there too. Now what we need is also we need Unreal add. Then we need detail customization, property editor, and editor style. Yeah. Now I think I already explained this once, but let's just go through it again. These public dependency module names were just they give us the ability to say to the engine that we need these modules and you need to load them for us. And we're also going to access them. So within Visual Studio, it tells it when it generates the solution, it makes it so you can have better intelligence. So if you have a great example of this is if you do anything in C++ and maybe you read off from a tutorial, but somehow you end up with unresolved externals as error, then you should just make sure that you have all your right modules in your dependencies. If you're unsure what module something is, you can just look up, go into the documentation, search for something. Like here I searched for reply. We're going to need this later. I wanted to know what the header files is. And it's generally a good indicator you go when now here you can see it's runtime and then Slate core, which is the module. And by the header you can usually also see it. It's engine source runtime. This means it's a runtime module, and then Slate core. There's also engine source editor and then module name and then other stuff. This means it's an engine module and you can't compile it for the runtime, but yeah. Now that we have this, one critical thing we need to do is also include our own project, our own module. We need to add this one. And we're also going to have to add 2 more lines. One is the public include paths, and we're just going to add. And now we're going to do the folder within the source folder where they are. So in this case, it's Voxelwald editor /public, and the private include paths. And we're going to point this to our private folder that we just created. Great, so this is most of the work done for our module. Not all of it. It won't work right now because we still have to create our header and C++ file. And again, we're going to create this in the Windows Explorer or whatever kind of OS you're using now. You create a header file for your module. You call it your module name.h. In my case, again, it's Voxelwald editor. And now here we're going to do Voxelwald editor.cpp. Now, one good thing should be that by now you should just be able to generate Visual Studio project files again. And exception while generating data. Well, it should be fine. Let's hope it is fine. Then you reload your solution, and then you should have your files in here, and it's easier to navigate through the Solution Explorer then. Also, you should be able to get a bit of IntelliSense again. Okay. So within this file, we need to create our module. I don't know if it's done here already. No, it's not. Well, there's a default module implementation, but we need a custom one anyway. So we need to include core U object. Most things need core U object. Then we're also going to include a module. Modules. Was it module manager.h? Oh, what was it? Can I take a look at here? Does it say it here? No, it does not. Does it say here? No. Well, it should be that. Create a class and fvoxel world editor module and inherits from iModule interface. Now there's some error with the generation of, there was an error with the generation of our Visual Studio solution. I don't know, we can try to generate it again. Show log. Detail customization. Could not find definition for module detail customization. Well, let's just have a look. I have everything done in this project already. I mistyped the module apparently. Detail customizations is what it is called. So let's go back to our build.cs. Hit save and go back to our new project, generate Visual Studio. It's much easier with the if you get at least some IntelliSense. Unreal can be slow and everything, but loading projects. Again, we're not in it for a pitch perfect thing. Can make errors pretty easily, but it's usually also easy to find them. So yeah, now let's go back to here and wait for it. It should probably now, we're going to create two functions. We're overriding two functions essentially, virtual void startup module, override, and shut down module, override. Also, these are in public. All right. Now there's a few other functions you can override, but these are the only two we need for this tutorial, and I'm not going to skim over everything here. Now we're going to create this one. I don't know where it is going to create this. Within our CPP file. Oh, it did it, yes. So it also automatically added the include. Most of the time, if I try to auto-generate these things, they don't work. If you want to have a great experience with Visual Studio and Unreal Engine, I recommend you Visual Assist X. Now it's quite expensive, and I'm not sponsored. I don't own it myself even. I don't have it running, but I tested it and it's great, and you can get it. But again, it's expensive. We're going to log and say voxel world editor loaded, and same here. Just copy this and also don't forget the semicolon. And shut down. Now what we have to do, one critical step more for it to work, we have to implement the module with this fine macro called fvoxelworld editor module, module name voxelworld editor, semicolon, hit compile, Control-Shift-B if you're on Windows and Visual Studio. And now wait for it. May take a few seconds. Alright, and now if we start up the engine, you see it loaded, and also the voxelworld editor loaded. That's what we just have written in there. So far so good. Now we have to create a new C++ class. Now keep in mind that we're not creating any Unreal class, but it's going to be in the voxelworld editor module. So you should now be able to choose here voxelworld, which is our game module and our runtime module, and the editor module. Now we're going to put this into private because we don't need it to be accessed by anything else than this module, and we're calling it chunk manager details. I leave the customization out. It's already pretty long path name, and my class that I want to modify is called chunk manager, so there's that. Now we're going to delete this one and also completely going to ignore this one and just hit save on both ends. The good thing here is now that we have an editor module, we don't need to declare every function as is with editor or yeah, essentially what we have done before is I have it here's all one thing after another. We don't have to declare everything as with editor only, or if with editor, which I think I have done here. Yes. Now I already have written the function to shuffle the assets from this list. But yeah, essentially this is what we don't have to do within this whole thing, within this whole module. Now there's this is some like error or bug, I don't know what it is. It's definitely not intended, but what the Unreal Engine does is it puts this these files you created within this filter in with the Visual Studio. Now don't worry, your files are still going to be in your private folder where you told it to generate these. It's just Visual Studio is going to show them wrongly. Now usually what should happen is if you refresh your Visual Studio project, which is a bit tedious to do it after every time you generate a new class. If you hit reload, it should be in the right folder if I'm correct. At least I hope so. If not, then well not. But again, it can be a bit, tedious to do this every time. It's just, I don't know. I don't think it's intended, but it is what it is. Can't change it for now. What we have to include here is two things, and one of them is going to be property editor, public, I detail customization. I think this is actually the only thing we need to include. Now we're going to create a class. If chunk manager details inherits from I detail customization. Two functions we're going to create. Actually, we're going to create three functions, but yeah. Whatever, public, static, shared. Oh yeah, I have it open in Notepad++. I have some notes there. Yeah, it's a shared reference of I detail customization. It's a function called make instance. And we're also going to create a virtual customize details. And oh, I'm pausing for a few seconds. All right, where were we? We were at the customize details. Yes, second function we have to add. Customize details. When we pass a reference of the layout builder onto our function. And also we're going to create a private t-array with weak object pointers to a uObject and call this objects to edit. We're also creating a function that's going to be an freply edit objects. Yes, okay. Should be fine. Yes. Great. So let's go into our chunk manager detail.cpp and create all of these functions. Now we have to return handled, and we're going to also include input reply. We're also going to include the detail layout builder. I don't know what it is with public private, but it somehow doesn't want to do some of these things. Also include property. Yeah, I'm already good at typing again. Property editor, public, and the detail category builder, and last but not least, property editor, public. Why did I do private again? Detail widget row.h. Now we're also going to have to include a few things from Slate, just like in the old tutorial. I missed this one, okay. Include widgets, text, and as text block, and also widgets, input, accessibility, s button, Deutsch. All right. So, first of all, here we're going to return make shareable new chunk manager details. That's already it. And also for this one, we're going to do it a bit different. This one I'm going to explain a bit more thoroughly because this is essentially where most of the magic happens. Yeah, what we probably should also include is our the chunk manager class that we want to add. Great. We're going to create or edit a category. So what is a category? I went through this in the old tutorial, but just for completion's sake, I want to go through this and here as well. So this is a category, as well as size, for example. It could be just, it's a smaller category. It's a subcategory in a sense. And a category can hold multiple values or things like, yeah, like this category has two values, right? Auto receive input and input priority. And but that's not everything. So each of these values is what's called a detail widget row. And so this detail widget row exists of two things. There's a splitter right here. That's essentially everywhere. And the splitter divides between the name content, which is this here. It's pretty self-explanatory, but name content, it describes this value, like it usually shows the name, right? So in this case, it's auto receive input. And then you have the value content, which shows the value, like here input priority value is 0, but you can also edit it. But like here, it only displays it because you cannot edit it. Maybe you can edit it when doing some other equation is true, but right now it's only showing the value. And essentially that's how the whole in details panel works. So first Visual Studio there. So you have essentially the detail layout builder, which is responsible for building this whole panel. So it's responsible for creating and editing categories, and then for creating these item rows, these widgets, the text box, and that's all essentially what the detail layout builder does. So in order for us to edit a category, what we have to do is we're going to make a variable, a reference to the iDetail category builder, again reference, and I will just call it category because it represents our category. And what it is detail builder, and we say edit category. Now we need to state the name of our category. So category names are, so in my case I want to go to settings and then voxel, which is the subcategory, right? So what I type here is settings, and then the vertical dash, I don't know what it's called, and then just voxel. And if you want to have, for example, a third subcategory, then you can type cat3, or I don't know how, it's just a third category. Now what we also need to show here is what we also can provide is a custom name. Now I'm going to give it a custom name because otherwise this settings thing the name will get a bit ostracized. I don't know how to say. Essentially, oh yeah, what we need to do before this, because we're working with a lot of f-text, we need to define the log text underscore namespace, and we need to define it as chunk manager details, and we're going to undefine it here. This essentially makes sure that we can use log text instead of NS log text, so we don't have to provide a namespace over and over and over again. So yeah, and the key, well, again, this is for translation, but we're not dealing with that today. So key is just essentially the key of which you can, if you have if you do translate it, you can essentially go over it by categories, and then your namespace is essentially like it says a namespace. You can also view it as a category. And yeah, so it's cat name, and this is the value it displays. And I want this value to be good old voxel settings. Let's just call it that. And then we have a category priority, and we'll just name it important. I don't know, can we do it now? Important, all right. So with that now, we are essentially saying what this does is if your category does not exist, it creates a new one. But essentially, if it does exist, it gives us the ability to edit it now. So I can say category and then add custom row. And that's essentially what we're going to do. We're going to add a custom row, and we need to provide a filter string. Again, that's log text for localization. And this is just keyword. I don't know, keyword. And what it's going to show is, I don't know, shuffle. And here we need to edit the name content. So this object now does provide us with the fdetail widget row. And we're going to edit the name content. This is where the weird Slate syntax begins. We're going to add in the name content. We're going to add a new text block. We're going to give it a text, and the text will say, what is it going to say? It's going to be log text because ftext wants us to use log text. Otherwise it hates us. Key is going to be key. I don't know. Name text, I don't know. And reassign materials. And give it the font of iDetail layout builder. Get detail font, which is a static function. And then we also want the value content to be edited. And nope, thank you. And at the end of it, just put a semicolon. Everything will be fine. Indentation is horrible. It's new. It's button now, and a button will have a text. Again, has to be log text, button text, and in this case it's shuffle, just shuffle, nothing else. And on click underscore raw, we're going to bind our function. We haven't done a important step yet. We're going to do this in a second. And we're going to bind to this element, and we're going to call chunk manager details, edit objects. Great. What we still have to do is get our objects to edit. Oh, I don't know this from the top of my head, so we're going to just take a look at the finished version that has it, that I already did a couple of hours ago. Nope. Yes, there we go. Detail builder, okay. So from the detail builder, we're going to get objects being customized and objects to edit. That's just that's the member function we've created in our header file. Right there, objects to edit. Now here, what we're going to do is essentially, last time we did it with a lambda function. I think that's not exactly a great way to do it. I think it's more it's more clean, say, to do it in a separate function. Gives you a bit more I don't know, not necessarily control, because you can do this all in a Lambda function, but I think it's easier to look through, because you can just see, oh yeah, here it's on this, okay, and this function edits it. And I think it's, personally, I think it's a bit more overviewable. I don't know. You can do how you want. In the old tutorial, I did it with a Lambda function. Again, not necessarily the way I would have gone about it right today. So we're here, and what we want to do is, first of all, do a good old for loop for a weak object pointer to uObject in objects to edit. First thing we're going to do is valid. If not, just skip. And what we're going to do then after that is cast it to our chunk manager. A chunk manager, that's our class. It's an actor class. Call it just CM for chunk manager. Equals cast a chunk manager object dot get. And I don't know. Well, I'm just going to do it because why not? If this pointer points to nothing, points to null, if it's a null pointer, skip it. Probably an unnecessary step, because we're already checking valid, and you know, it only can be a chunk manager, but I don't safety first. It's only editor function. We're not caring about the best performance for everything. You know, safe is safe. Let's go safe. Shuffle asset list. Yeah, so that's a function we're going to call. What we're going to do now is, in crossing our fingers that we didn't do any mistakes, we're going to hit compile. Wait for it to compile. And it did it. And I don't know if our voxel editor module is loaded. I don't see it. Probably just going to restart it. What I'd like to do is quit the engine, Ctrl-Shift-B to recompile, and then just double-click your uProject. Need a little tip. Open with Unreal Engine and then set this as default, and you can just open up Unreal Engine via double-clicking on your uProject, because usually you don't edit your uProject this often, and if you do, you can just say open with, or just drag it like here, and fine, you know. Well, you can drag it there, but try open with and then JSON editor, and everything will be fine. Should be fine. Great, so now we're in our world. Chunk manager, where is it? I can't see it. Oh, right. No, we're not done yet. Haha, I was wrong. We'll still need to load our module. So what we're going to do, we have to include some things. Voxel world, chunk management, and chunk manager. Also, just for the completion's sake, make these slashes. Also including property editor, public editor module.h. And we're also going to include our chunk manager details.h. Yeah, okay, so good. Now we have to load our module, so I think it's f property editor module reference property add module, and we get it from the module manager load module checked. property editor module, property editor is, I believe, what it is called. So, and then we have to say to the property add module register custom class layout. And the class name, which is why we have chunk manager here, a chunk manager static class, and then get f name. Great. Let's just make it a bit more readable for everyone. And now here we have to do f on. Oh no, I don't know this one. Let's just open this one up as well. Okay, f on get detail customization instance, create static. So essentially a delegate we're binding to, and f chunk manager details make instance. Great. So this should be it, in all honesty. Should hit compile, and I don't know if it will reload our editor module. That can be kinda wonky from time to time. It doesn't seem like we did shut it down and reload it, so won't see any changes right now to my knowledge. So again, what I do, close the editor, Control-Shift-B, U project, open again. Only takes a few seconds. If you have had the engine open, there's a lot of cache files it loads up from, and then it's pretty fast. And now we have our button here, and if I just switch these around and hit shuffle again, these are now again normal. It goes through the list of these and then reassigns them. Alright, so that's it.